Hello, welcome to the You, Me, We Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Jackie, and this is a podcast where I'm going to explore emotions and different ways that they show up in our lives. I'm interested in emotions because I deal with them on a regular basis for my work. I'm a counsellor, and they affect my life, they affect your life, they affect all of our lives. So let's get stuck in. This podcast is not a substitute for seeking professional mental health guidance and advice. If anything in these episodes are upsetting or cause you to want further exploration, please seek professional mental health guidance and advice. And if you are unable to keep yourself safe, please take yourself to accident and emergency. I'm going to talk about resentment today. In my earlier episode, I talked about anger. Now, at worst, resentment can lead to death, really, because somebody could see red and commit murder or hurt themselves. That's at its worst. Resentment comes from anger. Resentments and anger we've all experienced. These emotions, you need to experience them to be human. On a spiritual level, the way I feel emotions are important are because they teach us, they help us evolve. Otherwise, we're going to keep going around and around, kind of like on a wheel, kind of like a karmic wheel of some type of thing, I'm thinking. We're going to keep going around and around, and it might suit some people, but I'm sure some people want off that wheel. They want to try something different. There could be all other kind of experiences we could be limiting ourselves from because we can't get past certain things. So resentment, let's have a little chat about that. That's when you cannot let go of something, and it's really anger is what it's about. And it can lead into a passive-aggressive area, which I mentioned in a previous episode, in the anger episode. With passive-aggressive stuff, it can be so very subtle. Emotions like these can be very subtle. You may feel it bubbling in somewhere in your body, for example. Somebody may have heartburn or indigestion and try to treat that when really, deep down, if they've done a deep dive dig, they're living with resentment and it's showing up physically. You could have a therapy session sometimes, somebody could come. And it can happen with people who can't get in touch with emotions. They could talk about an ache in their jaw or in their throat. They're talking about the physical symptoms of a sensation that's with them, when actually what needs to be released is the thing that's preventing them from crying. They would need to cry, and it's presenting itself in a physical way, like an ache, a tension, an ache sitting around the throat area, like a lump in the throat. The ability to hang on to that for a prolonged period of time to the point that it causes an ache, rather than just be able to release it and let that cry go. I think crying is a very interesting topic, actually. But resentment, when it comes to these feelings, exploration can be the key. Where are you resentful? What are you resentful about? And how is that emotion impacting on your life? Where's it showing up? What is it doing for your relationships with others, and what's it doing for your relationship with yourself? And what needs to happen for you to feel better about that? When it comes to resentment, I'll share something here, just as an example. Sometimes it could be something that's hard to avoid. I remember as a child, I absolutely disliked school. I couldn't see the purpose of it other than to make friends, which I'd done. And I still have friends to this day that I have from school. I love my friends. To me, that was the purpose of school. Anything else seemed, I really resented it. That's why I've given this as an example. I hated going in, hated the uniform. I'm using strong words like hate, aren't I? Strong feelings, disliked it. Didn't like the subjects. Few things interesting, but not too much. I hated how it took time out of my day. It felt like a real inconvenience to my life. Yeah, I didn't have much choice in having to go. I tried to push against it. I used to truant a lot. Always got me in trouble. I used to be in detentions a lot. I used to get kicked out of class a lot. I still had to go. So I rebelled a lot, but I still had to go. Resentment. Resented going. So things people can have in their lives that are bubbling up resentment, but they have to do it. It's limited choices for how it can be for that person. They've got to live with that. The solution to resentment is forgiveness, letting it go. But how easy is it to let something go? And I believe what can really help is being able, my throat just needed clearing there, like something's blocking it. Is the point at which I'm trying to vocalize something is the point at which my throat gets restricted. Being able to vocalize your grievance and feel heard, get it off your chest, vent. That can help with resentment, and not just to vent, but to the right person and in the right way, because people who have a lot of resentment, they might find themselves complaining a lot about the same thing again and again and again, to the point that people start avoiding them, thinking, oh my gosh, here they go again about that thing again. Oh, what they are doing is what they're expressing, a complaint, but it needs to be done in the right way, to the right person. And when you get that lined up nicely, a good fit, it can really help work through that resentment and do some nice forgiveness work, which ultimately is about letting go. But it's about seeing how resentment showing up in your life the way it does, is it really serving you? Is it helping you? Or is it weighing you down? How would you like to be able to feel instead of how you do currently feel? What kind of emotion are you currently aiming for? If you could swap it out for another emotion, what would you swap it out for? You don't have to necessarily forget something. That might be too far a stretch. It might be useful to remember something so you can remember your part in your situation, so the other person's part in the situation. So if anything comes like that again, resembling that again, I compare the two and identify it. And go carefully with yourself. To not put yourself in that position that could be dangerous, and protect your vulnerabilities, or to be aware from it. And to find a place of peace. Because that's what resentment can feel like, a bubbling, sizzling, sensitive, poke it a little bit and it flares up, niggle, irritating, annoyance. And resentment is one of those things that show up in relationships, all kind of relationships, any type of relationship. But if you chose an intimate partner relationship as an easy example, because a lot of people can imagine that, resentment can come from how somebody walks in through the door after a long day's work and another person has been in the house all day, how they come in and how they greet another person. If it's not done in a particular way, these small things can build up to bigger things and foster resentment if they're not addressed straight away. And I've shared with a lot of other people something that I've learned, that actually what can actually help prevent that kind of resentment is having a consistent thing that people do to break down any ice forming over the heart. I'll give an example. My son and I often like to have a hug and a cuddle at any point in the day. At any point he can ask for a cuddle and a hug. Sometimes I'm in the middle of cooking, my hands are busy, but he might say, "Mum, I want a hug." So I'll stop what I'm doing and give him a hug. It's like having a consistent thing where you are, regardless of what's being said, what's happening, who's annoyed with who's cheesed off who, the point at which another person says, "Can I have a hug?" everything stops there and then. You just give each other a hug and you just meet the other person's need. Having something like that that's consistent is useful. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be like a friendship. It could be like a deal with a friendship. Okay, let's make sure we check in every week, make a voice note, a text message. If there's some things in the maintenance, the maintaining of something that I think that can help with preventing resentment. The prevention is what I'm talking about here, the maintaining of a thing. So that's where resentment can come up in a relationship. I've always thought it's never about acquiring a thing. You can acquire money or a person or a particular circumstance, a particular job that you want. You can acquire these things. Believe it or not, if you do really well, you focus on something, you focus on one thing and you do it well, you can acquire it. To me, the issue is maintaining it. The maintenance of a thing, of a situation, of a relationship, of a circumstance, the maintaining of that. And when people think they put all their focus on the acquiring of it, but not the maintenance of it, I reckon that's probably where resentment can really build, because somebody might think, well, they really wanted this thing, but actually, now they've got it, don't know what to do with it now. That's the tricky part. That's where the work really goes in. And having the consistent routine, like I used the example of being able to hug at any point, to have that consistency with checking-ins or whatever ritual that person may have on a periodical basis, it prevents resentment building. It gives the opportunity to clear the air. A bit like when you go to a restaurant and the waiter serves you, you get your food, you start eating, and then 5 minutes later the waiter comes back. 5-10 minutes later, they return back to the table and they say, "Is everything okay? How is your food?" It gives you as a client an opportunity, as a customer, the opportunity to say, "No, there's too much salt," or "It's good," or "It's not good," or "Can this return back to the kitchen? Can I get this done different?" It gives you an opportunity to air any grievance, so it can prevent a dissatisfied customer, prevent a negative experience. And resentment can build up from negative experiences. So, prevention by touching base. And thinking of resentment as somebody struggling with resentment, if you think of it like this, what needs to arrive in your life, what needs to come about in your life for you to feel differently, and how do you want to feel? What would you like to be different? And how can you start working towards that being different? Because ultimately, if you empower yourself to be able to make these changes, this is where it can happen. So how to make that shift from resentment into something like its opposite, which I'd say is gratitude. It would be like undoing the damage of being around a situation that's brought about that resentment. Let's use an example again. I like to use relationships because it doesn't have to be that, but it's a really simple one I think a lot of people can just easily relate to. being in something that's a relationship that's maybe not going well, it's very confusing. Say like a narcissistic abusive relationship, basically what it consists of is very deep resentment. They resent you and you are resenting them from their behavior, from them to you, and actually you to them. And what's fostered there is resentment. And if you think of it on an energetic level, I'd say gratitude and resentment are probably polar opposites energetically. And it's not a good position to be in, down the further end of resentment. And I've come to the awareness that in order to build yourself back around something that's unhealthy, whether it's a bad relationship, a bad job, something like that's unhealthy, you may be quite lost in yourself. You might feel a bit lost. You might not know up from down. So getting back to a place where you can open your heart again really takes some work, and it takes some time. And learning something like how to love, you might tell yourself, I want to be in a loving relationship. I want loving friends. I want a satisfying and loving job. I want a job that has more love in it. In order to do that, you need to open your heart. But that may seem completely counterproductive because your heart is actually what's being hurt. Yet, your heart is what's going to lead you through to the growth that you need in post-traumatic growth arena. You may think, I don't know what love is, I don't know how to love. But what I've learned is where to start is with gratitude. If you can hold on to the feeling of gratitude and anchor that into your heart space. Start by thinking about the things you are grateful for in others, in yourself, in your environment, and slowly let that drench your heart and build from that position. It's a good brick to start with your building. It's a good piece to start with your foundation to build up from that gratitude. So I hope you found my work today helpful, talking about resentment into gratitude and being able to make that shift. So if you like my work, please follow, like and subscribe. It really helps me get the word out there. And you have a fantastic day. I am grateful for you.